I drove up this road one morning, fresh snow. Drove the direction the truck's pointing right now, all the way to the top, about 26 miles. Didn't see a single track. Drove back. This is about 2,000 feet. This is well over halfway back to the pavement, and cut a cougar track right here. It had come up the road and gone up that road. And that road goes up to a place called Schmidt Knob. It went up probably about a mile, right up the road, walked right up the road, and sat down. Beautiful spot. You could see the road go for 300 or 400 yards out in front. It sat down in the snow, and by its front feet, it must have sat there for quite a while. Its front feet kept shuffling around. I've got a picture of it. You can see well, I guess they'd be his heels laying in the snow, and he's sitting down. You can see his tail mark, and you can see all these front paw tracks. And then he whirled around and he walked right back down. There was a double track on this road. I wanted to see how far he went. I saw the double track, but I went ahead up and got a good picture of that track. Anyway, he came back down, stayed right in the ditch, followed the ditch for about 100 yards, and then crossed over. And about a half a mile back, there's a road that goes to the right, and it angles back up this way. I drove up and went on that road, and he cut that road, and then it goes up over a ridge. And that road went to the end of the ridge, went around and went back, and it didn't cross. He didn't cross the opposite side road. And so I stopped and I walked up that ridge. I'm going to go up there now and do a stand, and then I'll tell you what happened. Okay, this is where I made the mistake. I found this spot and I said, oh, an opening right on top. So I set the call down in it, down in here. And I moved up to the top of the opening, right up there. I think it was that stump there I was sitting next to. And that was the mistake. I was facing downhill. The road that I saw the cat tracks on was over here. On the opposite side over here is the road I stopped on that didn't have any cat tracks on. You can see how thick it is coming up into here. And it was steep, straight up and down steep. So I got to this and I thought, oh, this is a good spot. I was thinking coyotes again. And that's where I made the mistake. Now I'm going to go uphill a little bit. This is the way the ridge goes up right here. I'm going to go up past this a little bit and set up and call uphill. After that stand, I'm going to come back to this spot and I'm going to tell you what happened. You believe how worked up that raven was? I've called them a lot, but never that many. There was about 7 on that stand. And there was 5 or 6 camp robbers, and they were all freaking out. And I went to cat distress, and then they mostly left, but that one hung around. He was just ticked off about something. And I went to the cougar vocals, and he still hung around. But anyway, I'm back over the top now to the spot where I was when I called this cat. He was on this hill somewhere. I knew he was on this hill somewhere because I had run all the way around it, and he'd gone up, but he hadn't come down. And so I'd set up, again, like a coyote spot, where I had visibility in front of me, and I was trying to be the predator, and that's the mistake. With mountain lions, you let them be the predator. I wanted the vantage. I wanted to be up above the opening, and this is the only real clear spot on this whole knob. And I set up at the top end of it, and I set the call at the bottom third of it, and was running a stand. I did a couple minutes of distress, and then I mostly went to vocals. I did a series of whistles. I did a series of female calls. I did a series of communicative calls. I did some more distress. About 15 minutes in, I went back to whistles. And on about the third whistle, I got a communicative woof. It's like, woof, from directly behind me. I mean, it was right there. And looking around what to do, I turn and look back, and I go ahead. This is 12 days after I got that cat that came in behind me, and it was back when you can buy 2 tags in Washington. I went and got another tag, and this is 12 days later. I did exactly the same mistake, and so I did exactly the same thing. I changed hands on the gun, and I turned it over. I went back like this, and I just sat there and looked and watched and watched and looked, and it was thick, and like it was just this is the spot. It was right there. And you can't see very far because of the crown of the hill, and there's this slough brush and ferns and roadies, and there was snow on the ground at the time, but it was still really hard to see. And didn't see anything. I'm looking back for probably 10 minutes, and nothing. And then I reach forward and get the remote, and I start changing sounds and doing all kinds of things that I can try and do to get it to sound off again. By its tracks, I don't know. I didn't follow the tracks all the way around and see if it came into the call. I should have. I was actually nervous because it was still up there somewhere. But I went back after it was 20 minutes after it woofed at me. I quit calling. I went back and I found its tracks. They were 22 yards behind me, and it had come straight down the ridge. And then it hadn't even stopped. It just veered over to that side. And while I'm looking back, it's walking around me over here. And I followed its tracks around a little bit and got into some horrible thick stuff. And I just didn't want to beat the brush with a cat in there. And I just came back up out. I'd made so much noise and it was blown. But talk about exciting, having one call right into the back of your head like that. It was just right behind me. Turned around, I'm watching that way, it's walking around me, and I never saw it. But another one for the vocals. It was up on this knob somewhere. Woke it up and called it in. Should have set up different. I should have set up off to the side of the opening. Had the call in the middle of the opening where I could have watched the whole thing. If it was a more distinct ridge, I should have set up at the bottom and looked up and just given up the vantage. It's different with cougars in that you want to cover the approaches to the call. You don't need to have a big opening that you can see in, because they're probably not going to come out in it. What they're going to do is take roots of cover up to the call, and they know the roots of cover. They knew, that cat knew that this was the only opening on this ridge, and it wasn't going to walk right down into it. It walked around it. I don't think it saw me. I don't think it knew I was there. I don't think it knew I was at the top of the opening. It just didn't want to come into the opening because it knew there was a spot where it would be visible in there, and it didn't want to be visible. They don't want to be seen. So I think that's what happened. It was just using cover, and in my ignorance, I was just blowing it. And that's one of my closest encounters. So that was pretty neat. That was 12 days after the one I killed. So I was figuring them out as far as the percentages, and I'm going to talk about that too. The calling percentages on hot stands versus cold stands is just unbelievable difference. So that was the Knob Hill call-in.